It was the most sacred object on earth. A box of acacia wood overlaid inside and out with pure gold, topped by a lid of solid gold called the mercy seat, with two golden cherubim facing each other, their wings stretched over the place where God himself said he would meet with his people. Inside it were the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, written, the Bible says, by the finger of God. It led Israel through the wilderness. It parted the Jordan River. It brought down the walls of Jericho. When the Philistines captured it, plagues broke out among them until they begged to send it back. Men who touched it without permission fell dead on the spot. It was the throne of God on earth, the single most important object in the entire religion of Israel. And then it vanished. It simply disappears from the pages of the Bible. One moment, it is the center of everything, housed in the Holy of Holies, behind the veil, in the temple Solomon built. And then the record goes silent. There is no verse that says where it went, no account of its capture, its destruction, its hiding. The most important object in the Old Testament slips out of the story without explanation. And for more than 2,500 years, no one has been able to say with certainty where it is. So what actually happened to the Ark of the Covenant? Today, we are going to walk through the evidence, what the Bible actually says, where the trail goes cold, and the major theories about where it went. Some of these theories are far more grounded than you would expect, and one of them, I think, deserves more attention than it usually gets. And at the end, we are going to ask a question that matters more than the location. Why did God let it disappear at all? Let us start by being precise about when the ark goes missing, because most people get this wrong. They assume it vanished in the dramatic destruction of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in 586 BC. But the evidence suggests the ark was already gone before that. Here is the last solid reference. In the 18th year of King Josiah of Judah, that is around 622 BC, Josiah is leading a great religious reform. He orders the Levites, in 2 Chronicles chapter 35, to put the holy ark in the temple that Solomon built. He tells them it no longer needs to be carried on their shoulders. And that is the last time in the entire Hebrew Bible that anyone gives an instruction about the ark as a present physical object in its place. After that, silence. When the Babylonians come, first in 597 BC and then with full force in 586 BC, they strip the temple. The books of 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles give us detailed inventories of what Nebuchadnezzar's forces carried off. They list the bronze pillars, the bronze sea, the pots, the shovels, the basins, the gold and silver bowls, the fire pans, an exhaustive catalog of temple furnishings hauled to Babylon. And the ark is not on the list. The most valuable, most sacred object in the temple is simply not mentioned among the plunder. That absence is the central mystery. If the Babylonians had taken the ark, you would expect it to be listed first, the crown jewel of the conquest. If they had destroyed it, you would expect some record of so significant a loss. But there is nothing. The silence in the plunder lists is deafening, and it gets louder. When the exiles return from Babylon decades later and rebuild the temple under Zerubbabel, the ark is not restored to the Holy of Holies. The Second Temple's most holy place, according to later Jewish sources, stood empty. The rabbis of the Mishnah record that in the Second Temple period, where the ark had once been, there was only a stone, a foundation stone, and nothing upon it. So by the time of Jesus, the ark was already long gone. When Roman soldiers under Titus destroyed the temple in 70 AD and paraded its treasures through Rome, and we can still see that parade carved on the Arch of Titus, the golden lampstand and the table of showbread carried aloft. The ark was not among them. The Jewish historian Josephus, an eyewitness, lists the treasures taken, and the ark is absent. It had already disappeared centuries earlier.
So the question is not, did Babylon take it? The question is, where did it go before Babylon arrived? And that is where the theories begin. The first theory is the simplest, and the one most mainstream scholars lean toward. The ark was destroyed or carried off and melted down when Jerusalem fell. The argument goes like this. The Babylonians were thorough. They burned the temple to the ground. Gold was gold, and an object covered in pure gold would have been an obvious target for plunder, regardless of its religious meaning to the Israelites. To the Babylonians, the ark was not a holy throne. It was treasure. They may have stripped the gold, melted it down, and discarded or destroyed the wooden core. On this view, the reason the ark is not specifically listed is that it was simply lumped in with the rest of the gold, its identity meaningless to the conquerors. The ark did not vanish mysteriously. It was looted and unmade like everything else. And the silence is just the silence of a catastrophe too total to itemize.
It is the least romantic theory, and for exactly that reason, many historians consider it the most likely. But it has a real weakness: the meticulous plunder lists. The biblical authors went out of their way to record even the bronze shovels and the silver basins. The idea that they would record the shovels but not mention the fate of the ark, the holiest object in their entire faith, strains belief. The omission feels less like an oversight and more like the ark was already not there to be taken. Which leads to the second theory, and this is the one with the oldest written support. The ark was hidden by the prophet Jeremiah before the Babylonians arrived.
This theory comes from a specific ancient source, the second book of Maccabees, chapter 2. It is not part of the Protestant Bible, but it is part of the Catholic and Orthodox canon, and as a historical document, it preserves a very old tradition. In that text, it is written that the prophet Jeremiah, warned by God of the coming destruction, took the tabernacle, the ark, and the altar of incense, and carried them to the mountain that Moses had climbed to see the promised land, Mount Nebo. There, the account says, Jeremiah found a hollow cave, placed the ark and the other objects inside, and sealed the entrance. And when some of his companions came later to mark the trail, they could not find it. Jeremiah rebuked them, saying the place would remain unknown until God gathers his people together again and shows his mercy. The location, in other words, was meant to be lost, deliberately, by divine intention, until the end of the age.
This is a remarkable tradition because of its age and its specificity. It names a prophet, a mountain, a method, and a reason. And it fits the timeline perfectly. Jeremiah was active in exactly the years before the fall of Jerusalem, warning the nation of precisely the catastrophe that was coming. If anyone had both the divine warning and the motive to hide the ark before Nebuchadnezzar arrived, it was Jeremiah. The weakness, of course, is that Mount Nebo is in modern Jordan, in territory that has been searched, and no cave with the ark has ever been found. But the tradition explicitly says it would not be found, so its absence is, in a strange way, consistent with the claim itself. The third theory moves underground, and it is the one that draws the most obsessive attention. The ark is hidden in a secret chamber beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The reasoning here is rooted in Jewish tradition itself. Some rabbinic sources suggest that the ark was not taken away at all, but was hidden in a deep, secret place prepared by Solomon when he built the temple, a chamber beneath the Holy of Holies, designed for exactly this purpose, to conceal the ark in the event of conquest. On this view,
When Josiah or the priests saw the Babylonian threat coming, they did not flee with the ark. They lowered it into the chambers that had been waiting beneath the mountain since the temple's foundation. And it is still there, directly beneath the spot where the temple once stood.
The power of this theory is that it requires no journey, no foreign mountain, no melting down. The ark simply went down rather than out. But it runs into an immovable obstacle, and that obstacle is the Temple Mount itself. Today, the site is one of the most politically and religiously sensitive locations on earth, home to the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, sacred to Islam, contested by Judaism. No archaeological excavation beneath it is permitted. Whatever lies beneath the Temple Mount, it cannot be dug for. So this theory has the peculiar quality of being both unfalsifiable and untestable. It can neither be proven nor disproven, which is precisely why it endures. The fourth theory is the most exotic, and also, surprisingly, the most institutionally maintained. The Ark is in Ethiopia. In the city of Aksum, in northern Ethiopia, there is a church, the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion. And the Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims, officially and to this day, that the original Ark of the Covenant resides inside a chapel on its grounds. The tradition behind this claim is ancient and elaborate. According to the Ethiopian national epic, the Kebra Nagast, the Glory of Kings, the Queen of Sheba visited King Solomon in Jerusalem, and from their union came a son, Menelik. When Menelik grew up, he traveled to Jerusalem to meet his father, and when he returned to Ethiopia, he brought the Ark of the Covenant with him, either with Solomon's blessing or, in some versions, secretly taken. The Ark, on this account, has been in Ethiopia ever since, guarded across the centuries.
And here is what makes this theory genuinely striking, rather than easy to dismiss. The Ark is guarded, the Ethiopian church says, by a single monk, a man given the title Guardian of the Ark, who is appointed for life, who alone may enter the chapel, and who never leaves the grounds until his death, at which point he names his successor. This has been maintained as an institution for centuries. The reverence is total. The claim is not a tourist curiosity. It is woven into the identity of one of the oldest Christian churches in the world. The obvious objection is equally total. No independent scholar, no archaeologist, no outside authority has ever been permitted to see the object. The Guardian does not allow it. So the claim can never be verified, and the faithful would say that is exactly as it should be. Some things are not meant to be examined. They are meant to be guarded. There are other theories, fainter ones. A tradition that the Ark was hidden in Egypt, taken during an earlier raid. A claim that it lies beneath a hill in Ireland. The accounts of individual treasure hunters in the 20th century who insisted they had seen it, or located it, or touched it, none of whom could ever produce evidence. These tend to dissolve under scrutiny. But the four major theories, destroyed by Babylon, hidden by Jeremiah, concealed beneath the Temple Mount, or carried to Ethiopia, each has real defenders, and each accounts for the evidence in its own way.
So, which is it? Let me be honest about where the evidence actually points, because that is what a careful look requires. The plain reading of history, the Babylonian destruction, the gold that any conqueror would seize, makes the first theory, destruction and looting, the most probable by ordinary standards. That is where most secular historians land. But the silence of the plunder lists genuinely is strange, and it leaves a door open. The Jeremiah tradition is the oldest written explanation we have for that silence,
and it fits the timeline with uncanny precision. The Temple Mount theory can't be tested, and the Ethiopian claim, while unverifiable, is maintained with a seriousness and continuity that demands respect, even from skeptics.
If I am weighing it as honestly as I can, the historian in me leans toward the simplest explanation, that the ark perished with the temple. But the strange, deliberate silence in the very texts that cataloged everything else, that silence keeps the question alive. And it may be that the silence is the most important clue of all, not because it tells us where the ark went, but because it tells us something about why it was allowed to go. Because here is the question underneath the question. The ark was the throne of God on earth, the place of his presence, the holiest object in the world. Why would God allow it to simply disappear? Why would he let the center of his own worship slip out of history without a word? And when you look closely at the Bible, you find that the answer was hinted at long before the ark ever went missing.
Listen to what God says through the prophet Jeremiah, the same Jeremiah of the hiding tradition, in chapter 3, verse 16. Speaking of the days to come, God says, "They will no longer say, 'The ark of the covenant of the Lord.' It will never enter their minds or be remembered. It will not be missed, nor will another one be made." Read that again. God himself, through the prophet, says the day is coming when the ark will not be remembered, will not be missed, and will not be remade. The disappearance of the ark was not an accident of war. It was foretold. It was, in some sense, intended. God was telling his people, through Jeremiah, that the ark had a shelf life, that it was pointing toward something that would make it unnecessary.
And what was it pointing toward? The ark was the place where the presence of God dwelt among his people, behind a veil, accessible to one man, one day a year, with blood. It was the meeting place between a holy God and a sinful people. And the entire New Testament is the announcement that the thing the ark only pictured has now arrived in person. The presence of God no longer dwells in a golden box in a back room behind a curtain. It dwells, the Gospel of John says, in a person. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And at the moment that person died, the veil of the temple, the very curtain that had separated the Holy of Holies, the room the ark once occupied, was torn in two from top to bottom. The barrier came down. The meeting place was thrown open.
The ark was a shadow, and when the substance arrives, you no longer need the shadow. This is why the ark could disappear without the catastrophe you would expect. By the time it vanished, it had already done its work. It had carried the presence of God through the wilderness. It had taught Israel across centuries the weight of holiness and the necessity of blood and the impossibility of casually approaching God. And then, having taught all of that, it stepped quietly out of the story, just as Jeremiah said it would, to make room for the one it had always been describing. There is something almost gracious in the way it disappears. The Bible does not give us a tragic scene of the ark being smashed or burned. It does not give us the throne of God humiliated in a Babylonian temple. It simply lets it go silent. The trail goes cold not because the story failed, but because the story moved on. From the box to the body, from the shadow to the substance, from a presence behind a veil to a presence among us and within us.
So where is the Ark of the Covenant? The honest answer is, we do not know. It may have been melted in the fires of Jerusalem. It may lie in a sealed cave on Mount Nebo, exactly where Jeremiah is said to have left it, waiting for a day God has not yet brought. It may rest in the dark beneath the Temple Mount, unreachable beneath the most contested ground on earth.
It may be in a guarded chapel in Axum, watched over by a single monk who will never let you see it. Each of these is held by someone, sincerely, today. But here is what I would leave you with. The Bible spends enormous energy describing how the ark was built and how it was carried and what it did, and almost no energy mourning its loss. The silence at the end is not the silence of grief. It is the silence of something that has finished its task. The ark pointed for 1,000 years to a presence that could not yet be approached. And then that presence walked into the world, tore the veil, and made the box obsolete.
We may never find the Ark of the Covenant, but the thing the Ark existed to point to, the presence of God dwelling with his people, is not lost at all. It is the one thing the New Testament insists can never be lost again. If this gave you a new way of seeing one of the Bible's greatest mysteries, share it with someone who loves digging into these questions. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next, and leave a comment. Which of the 4 theories do you find most convincing? Pray for us. God bless you.